Welcome back to the Business That Matters Spotlight. My name is Warren Coughlin, your ever-loving host. One of the questions entrepreneurs have to think about at some point is exiting. Some make that, part of their planning right from the get-go. Others start thinking about it only after they got tired or they're getting close to retirement. But here's the thing. For most owners, you only exit once. How skilled do you think you're going to be at a complex transaction you've never done before and will likely never do again? It's super important that you get the input and guidance of someone who's actually been there before, who's done this more than once, hopefully many times. And today's guest is just that person. Barb Stuhlemmer is the founder of Blitz Business Success, and her expertise is in helping entrepreneurs plan for their exit. Welcome, Barb.
Thanks for having me, Warren.
Oh, it's a pleasure. Listen, on the podcast here, what we like to do is, just in case someone can't stick around for the entire podcast, like to leave them with some value right out of the get-go. So if you have one tip for somebody who's thinking about exiting, what would that be?
Oh, I would start with, it's never too early to create the plan that you need to get out of your business. If you start now, thinking about what it would actually look like for you to leave your business, and that might mean a whole bunch of different things, but let's say you could sell it, or you can just retire out of it, you could close it down, you could give it to one of your kids. If you know what that is and what the process is ahead of time, it makes it so much easier, because you can't do it in 6 months. I can guarantee if you've never thought about it, 6 months will not be enough time.
Amen to that. So let's talk a little bit about you and your background. How'd you get into this? What did you do before? I'm sure you didn't just pop out of school going, hey, I'm going to help businesses exit.
I didn't. I popped out of school going, oh, I'm going to work in a laboratory, which I did for a while. I was worked in waste transfer. I worked in medical. I worked in medical device manufacturing, and I did technical writing. And from there, I started my own business 20 years ago as a technical writer, helping medical device and software development create help systems for their software and their different kinds of processes.
A national preparation ground for business.
Yeah. But I did the kind of the component of what was important to me was, as a business owner, all I wanted to do was help business owners do really well. And I couldn't really do that as their technical writer, because people didn't see me as someone who could help them do that. And my drive for that was the fact that most of my family owned businesses. So I had, skills of that. I'd always worked in small business, whether I worked for a family member or friends or someone else. I didn't work in large companies, and I just saw the challenges over and over again that they were having. So I spent about 15 years looking at how this works, what it works like, what kind of challenges they had, how I could help them. And of course, starting my own business, I had some of the skills of that, because you really felt that when you were starting.
Right. And so when did you make this transition? Like, did you work for someone else doing this kind of work, or did you just launch into starting your own? Or like, how did you go from that kind of work to, I'm sure there was probably a couple of steps in between.
Well, there was. I did other small businesses kind of on the side when I was going to university and when I was a teenager. So I had some skills which I would not recommend as being the only thing that someone has done for a business. But because I was helping people along the way, when I transitioned, I spent time connected with other people who were doing this. So we were helping people together, and I spent a lot of time building systems that would help people. As a systems and technical writer, that's what kind of where my strategic brain comes from, and the things that I could help people with. And that's kind of where I started, is how can I help people implement systems that would make whatever they need to happen in their business happen well.
And so what's the full range of services that Blitz does?
Well, I'm looking at business owners that are small businesses in Canada. So the small business owner that are Canadian businesses figure out what it is they need to do to be able to exit their business. But what it turns out is what you do to exit your business are the things that can help you grow your business, manage your business, look after your people. So I look at the culture within the business. I look at the systems that help people manage the day-to-day so that they can let go of all the stuff that they have. And I help business owners figure out how they can let go of control of the stuff in their business. So how can they they offload, or how can they make that transition so that they aren't the only person doing the work.
And so when you say small business, for exiting, does that include solopreneurs, or how small is small and how big is still small?
Yeah, well, the solopreneurs, yes. I mean, the system is slightly different for the solopreneurs because it's so someone who was a solopreneur wanted to do this, and we were looking at what it was that she had to have that was actual tangible and intangible assets of her business that she would have been able to sell so that she could walk away from the business. So as a solopreneur, if you are the product, it's very difficult to sell your business. So there's some challenges around that for sure. But most of the businesses I work with, I would say, I know that Industry Canada says that small businesses are under 50 employees, but particularly for service-based businesses. But I usually look at companies that are under 25 and over about 7 or 8 people.
And is there a revenue range as well, or is it just people?
No, I mean, I think some of the challenges with if you have 8 people and your gross revenue was a certain amount, it might make sense. But if you were a small business and you had no profit margin, or you had very little profit margin, you might have a challenge paying for that kind of support systems and mentoring systems.
Right. And so what does an engagement look like with you? Like if somebody's saying, "Oh my God, I'm 5 years from retiring and this is something I really need." So what do they do to connect with you?
Right. Well, usually I have people start by doing an assessment that I have online. So I didn't have the assessment tool here, but I can pull it up really quickly if we need to, Brett. So just make sure that you get that component marked there. So the assessment is the exit readiness assessment, and it allows someone to go and evaluate 10 different areas of their business to determine what areas they need to focus on to be able to exit. With that, I can then help people. We start with I start with the owner themselves. We go through another kind of assessment that's a lot more specific and takes a little more time to do. And with that, we use that to determine what the owner and their team are going to need to do. There is also an assessment of the team. So this is all up front, usually within the first month of working together. And then one of the things I know about making sure that change is really successful is ensuring that the team is on board. Some of the research that I've looked at when I was doing my MBA just recently is that change doesn't happen if the people in the team don't agree with it, don't buy into it, don't know about it. You can't have a business make a transition just because you want out, and the business is going to, you hope, work really well and continue to grow and survive. And that's what someone who's buying your business wants.
Right. And so there's the first assessment that you talked about. That's on your website. Is that like the first stage, a complimentary assessment to get in the game?
Yes. So the assessment, I mean, you will get the full assessment, and it'll tell you where you are, and it's weighted. So I've weighted it based on things that I know about businesses. Like I know that one of the biggest challenges for small business is control. So one of the heaviest weighted areas in that assessment, it only takes, it's less than 5 minutes to do. So I noted that most people are doing it about 3.5 minutes. So it's a very short assessment, and it just quickly goes through a bunch of questions that say, this area of your business is a challenge. I had one person I think their overall rating was something like 92%. So they're really close to readiness, but they had one piece of their business that was a 42% because of the weighting that was in it. And that they know that this is a problem in their business, and that was something that they're going to have a challenge with trying to make it valuable for the next person and make sure that the business stays working well while they go through the transition of stepping away.
And so what was that one area? That sounds intriguing. One area that could bring you down that much?
Well, it depends on the area, right? So if you have a problem with letting go of control, that is definitely, like I said, that's my highest weighted one. If you're the only person who is willing to make all the decisions. They have to see everything. You micromanage. No one can make any kind of changes or suggestions that are valuable enough that they can actually start implementing before you make a check mark on everything. So that's a real big red flag for me. Is when I look at something, I come in with a mindset of, I wanted to buy this business. What problems would I see this business having? And that's a big one. As I look at it and go, that person owns everything in the business. How am I going to take over the business if I can't, take control over everything and no one else knows what's going on?
So the team-based assessment, that sounds like an interesting thing that any buyer would probably be interested in hearing about. What kind of information? I mean, we don't have to go item by item, but like, what's the category or categories of information that it provides, and what's the value of that to either the owner or the buyer?
Right. Well, I think team is really important, as you do, Warren. I've heard you speak before, so I know that you see that as being a valuable part of a business. And there's actually two areas in here with questions under each. One is team readiness and one is team growth. So you're asking questions about, is the team able to communicate well, or are they allowed to communicate, or do you communicate? So there's components in there around what is your business's communication style. And then for team growth, you're looking at things like, do you regularly assess the skills of the team that you have? I find when we start working with people, sometimes they go, well, I want to be able to give this off, but I don't have anyone else on my team who does this. And then we go through an assessment with the team, and it turns out that they have two people not only capable, but willing and wanting to take on that extra work. And it's like, ooh, you could have done this years ago. You had no idea.
That's funny. That's actually very. I remember hearing from an entrepreneur years ago that when he stepped away from the business, the productivity of the rest of his team actually dramatically accelerated. And it wasn't because he had inefficient systems, but it was just because everyone assumed that everything had to go through him. And as soon as he stepped out of the way, it was like, okay, the reins are off and we can run.
Yeah. Yeah. So they know that they can do it when he's not there, which is a great step, knowing that they have the skills and they already know the process of being able to manage the challenges, or being able to make little shifts and things like that without having to ask questions. But having someone feeling that they have to when they're around, that would have been an interesting challenge for you to help that person make those changes, I would assume.
Oh, yeah. Yeah. Now, tell me, why do you do what you do? Like, why do you love this? What made you, do this?
Yeah. I do this because I know a lot of small business owners. I've known a lot my entire life, and I see that they are a huge component of our community. They are, 98.6% of all businesses in Canada are small businesses. So I know that, you either work for a small business or you own a small business. There's a lot of people who are connected to a small business, and they make our economy run. They are the people who are in our grocery stores, but they're also the ones who are, doing the small things that our businesses need, or the big things. Like, there's some really hefty things that some small businesses are capable of doing, and it's important work.
Oh yeah, I have clients that are like large institutions rely on them for really important elements of their business. I mean, the small business does not mean non-impactful business or non-important business.
No. Yeah, if you can shut down an entire manufacturing company because the person who comes in to fix your Bobcat, and you can't use your Bobcat, you are screwed. Can I say that? You're in a lot of trouble.
So let's think about, what are some common mistakes people make when thinking about exiting?
Well, like I said, for the beginning with the tip at the beginning, the most common mistake is assuming that all they, basically have to do is say that they find out what the business is worth and then they can sell it and walk away. So I think the most common mistake is assuming that they can do it without having to prepare anything.
Right. And then, just in terms of with people's expectations, like I often have this conversation with clients. It's like, if there's two businesses and both have an EBITDA or a profit of $1 million, the one business has 80% of their revenue from one client, the other has a diversified client base. Or, one is relying on 20-year-old technology and the other is integrating AI into their current processes. Like, which would you rather buy?
Yeah.
And the valuation piece, or one has great systems, so the owner doesn't have to be operationally involved, and the other requires a lot of day-to-day involvement, which is going to be more attractive. And I say this because I hear all the time things like, I'm sure you get this too, like, oh, my business or businesses in my industry command a 4-time multiple, and they just rely on that. As if the category is the only driver of valuation. So, like, what do you say to entrepreneurs about that? And then how do you, what do you see as the drivers of valuation?
Right. Well, I had someone once come and ask me about their business. They were thinking about selling. They talked to their accountant who gave them a multiple, as you talked about, and the multiple was 2 times their revenue. And they said, well, I don't think it's worth that much, so I'm only going to ask this much. And I went, well, that's interesting. Now, before I give this second part here, I want to be very specific. I am not a certified company valuation, but I am capable of recognizing what I would pay for. So I said, well, let me spend a few minutes, by minutes, I said a couple hours actually, and take a look at your business and have a view of what it was that I thought her business was worth. And if I was going to buy it, what would I actually pay for it is what I told her. And when I was finished, it was only a quarter of what she thought, which was an eighth of what the accountant thought. And the reason was the business was under her personal name. So I couldn't buy her name. She was the one who was known in the business. And that meant that if she was going to sell, it was very hard for other people to use that brand because she was the brand. The product that she had was very well known. So the product itself or her service was very well known and had its own brand name, but it wasn't registered. So there was another company in Canada that had already registered that a few years earlier. And they had been keeping their eye on this company going, all of a sudden their social media was picking up. Their customers were getting confused, even though they didn't do the same thing. So there was a challenge with that. So I said, you don't have a brand that you own. You don't have the business name that someone else could buy. You don't have an incorporation, which is one of the another challenge that I see. You don't have an incorporation. So if you want someone to buy it, they're buying other assets, which is possible, and maybe that's what you want. But I have a client right now who didn't have a corporation, someone that had recently, and she didn't have a corporation. It's like, if you don't have a corporation and you're making a fair amount of money, how are you able to pay all these extra taxes? And why would you want to? Particularly for this person, they are very, they love to be able to give money to charities and whatnot. So they like to be able to support their communities. And when they realized how much they were losing out on, like tens of thousands of dollars, it was like, wow, like this is a huge win for us as a business, but it also is a win for my company and its value moving forward.
Right. So then in terms of what creates value, then there's some part of what you just articulated, I think, is like something that is protectable, like either a brand or a process or a client base or something, right? From like that gives because for people who are listening and don't know, like a multiple basically means my assessment of how many years into the future the revenue or profit, depending on how it's done, will continue into the future at its current rate or grow.
Right.
So to look at that, you've got to be able to say, okay, there's a reason why I can believe that's going to continue. Yeah. So, if you have some intellectual property that's protected, if you have a brand that's known, if you have long-term client relationships, which suggests that those clients are going to come back, or you have some marketing or sales process that reliably produces lead generation, you have some technology that gives you some competitive advantage, or you have some locked-in partnerships, either channel partnerships or product partnerships, that give you that opportunity. Those are all things that add to value. Whereas if I'm hearing you right, part of it is just if you've got nothing, like somebody else can come in and just knock you off the block tomorrow, that's a far riskier buy, which is going to bring down your value.
Yeah, absolutely. I think one of the minimum things that you can have, if you just wanted to walk away from your company, you're thinking that there's something that you can sell, it would be your database. But if you have a clientele that is kind of a one-time purchasing, let's say you're helping people who are new to Canada. Well, they're only new to Canada so long, they will refer you to other people and their families, but that particular person themselves may not be someone who's a recurring client. So having, something else that's valuable, I mean, you could, at the very least, you can sell your corporation because if it's been in business for a while and it has a good credit rating, then someone else could use it to start another business and already have a credit rating and a variety of different things. But that's not a lot of money. So it depends on what you're hoping to get out of your business. No one says that you have to leave with millions of dollars. But if you have a clientele that you love and you love serving, what you don't want to do is walk away from your business and leave them with nothing. So I think that's the kind of the heartfelt component of what I see in small businesses. They really want to serve their communities, and they can't do that just by walking away and saying, good luck, I'm sorry, I'm done. That's not typical of what I see in small business owners.
Isn't that interesting? Like I was having a conversation with somebody earlier today, and it is a real distinction. And it's not that people who work in big companies don't, but I see like small businesses, they do seem to have that passion for their community and their people and the people around them in a really special way, don't you think?
Yeah, I think the small business there's kind of a characteristics that are understood about small business. When you're small, when you first start, you are a founder cultured business. The founder is the one who makes the decisions on where the values are going to be positioned and what your mission is going to be and whatnot. And as the business grows, you start bringing in people. And if you do it right, you bring in people that align with your value systems. And then you have these people that are interested in being part of your business. But a lot of small businesses, when you hit about 10, you start seeing a shift in that the values being more of a culture of the people that are in it. But once you get up to like 50 or 60 or 100 people, the culture itself is built sometimes in silos, depending on how the company itself shares the culture within it. So small business, I think, is special because you're together, maybe not in one place, but you are working together in the same components of what you have in your business, and you're not separated by several different departments. And that makes it a lot more tight.
Mm-hmm. Now, are you with your clients through the transition? Like when the sale happens, are you helping them hear it? No.
No. So all I'm doing is preparing them for the time that they want to be able to exit their business. So where would that happen, or when would that happen, and what does it look like for them? But I would suggest that when you get to that part, actually just today, someone went through and did the score app, and they got like almost 100% the score app. And so I responded to them like, congratulations. Clearly you're on your way to being able to exit your business. And here's a couple things I would suggest you do. So this would be beyond what I do, because I can't really help someone once they have all the things in place and they don't have to worry about, what the business looks like for someone else. So I suggest that they go and get someone who can value the business appropriately for them, so they know what they can ask for. And it's like selling a house. You can't just go and say, my house is worth $1 million, and yet everyone else in the neighborhood is only worth $650,000. So you have to know what your business is worth and why, and then someone who can help you. So it's like getting a real estate agent to help you sell the business itself, or sell your home. You're doing that for your business too. Someone who can help you through the legal components, whether it's a lawyer or there are corporate real estate agents who can help you with that kind of transition piece as well. So finding the experts that can get you through that final piece.
And do you find, is there a mindset of entrepreneurs who are more likely to be able to succeed at this effort than others? Like there's some people that just, they're willing to take the advice, or they understand what an exit actually may mean, or whatever, however you want to tackle that. But I imagine you see different approaches to the question.
Interesting. I would think yes. I don't know what that is. That requires some research. I think that's really interesting. My feeling is that people get to a certain place and they don't know that they need something until they find out that they need something. So, and I'm just as guilty of that. You find out, you don't know what you don't know until you find out that you didn't know it, right?
Right.
So I think there's a component of people who recognize that they want to do something like start a business. And when they started a business, they thought, oh, I'm going to figure out what my goals are for this. And I'm going to create a plan to get there. And I'm going to think about all the pieces to get there. And we do that when we start a business. And, one of the writers from Investopedia suggested that it would be ideal if everybody who started a business also thought about what that looked like for exiting. If you start your business with that in mind, then you don't have to think about it later because your business is already built that way.
That's right.
But back to your original question, like the mindset of people is, I know how to build a plan to reach a goal. By the time you've been in business for a while, you've probably done it several times. So you probably recognize, well, when I go to exit, I probably want to do the same thing. But what I'm finding is most people don't think that. They just, I'm ready to exit. So what? So how much am I going to get for my business? And
Right.
that's not the first question you need to ask.
So in what, if any, are some common, like you said, right at the top, you said what people need to do is sort of be thinking about exiting well ahead of time and start putting things in place. Are there really common things that are overlooked that should receive focus earlier?
Mm-hmm.
Like I imagine most businesses, like, we're out there selling, so we got our sales together, but maybe they do things on the back of the napkin a lot, so processes aren't in place, or they're not thinking, we don't have good employment agreements, or like the things that may up the valuation or make it easier to sell that they just don't think about when they're in operational mode.
Yeah, I think you're right about those components. I'm not sure that there's one in particular. That's why my assessment does so many different areas, because some people are really good at their systems, but not really good with their culture, or really good at managing their culture, but they're not really good at their own control systems. One of the things that I find challenging for business owners is having some kind of that idea of the balance in life. And it doesn't mean the same amount of work as it is in your lifestyle, but that's what you love doing, that you get to do at work and at play. And I find that a lot of business owners want to get out of their business because they are so tired of doing everything all the time. Like there's just no space. They can't take on new clients. They can't. And that's a challenge. You want to be able to sell a business, and the business owner who wants to buy it realizes you can't take on more clients. No one wants to buy a business that can't grow, right? So I think there are some challenges in that.
Yeah. And then just that life balance piece is important. And actually, have you spoke with people post sale? Like one of the things I've observed sometimes is that people run their business for years or decades, and it's all consuming, right? And then when they leave, there's this big vacuum. And sometimes it's not uncommon for people to actually fall into kind of depression, because this thing is gone. Like, have you either seen that, or do you do anything to help them prepare for that?
Yeah, I think it might be that I attract a different type of business owner, but the business owners that I attract are people like myself who, to give you an example, some years ago when I was quite young, I'd been to the bank and they asked you the financial questions about when do you want to retire? And I went, what do you mean? They said, well, what age would you like to retire at? Like 55, 60? You went, retire? No. And they went, well, we have to make some numbers. So you have to take it. I don't have to take anything. I don't have to guess a number. And I've heard someone last week who was doing the same thing. It's like, his friends are going, why aren't you retiring? Or when are you retiring? He goes, well, why don't you describe what retiring means? And he goes, well, you get to do the things you love to do more often. He goes, I'm doing that all the time. So I find that a lot of business owners that I've seen transition out of a business usually have more than one business going at a time, or have an idea of starting something else, and just continue on. So I don't see the same challenges that I see with people who want to retire from a job, because that that job was someone else's control piece. And once it's gone, you now have to find something completely different to manage your life. But with someone who's an entrepreneur, you just have to start something different. And that's often what happens.
And do you find there's types of businesses that are easier to prepare, like our service-based businesses or manufacturing or product-based or knowledge businesses? Are there some that are like more saleable?
Well, I think, when you have a business that has some tangible components in it that you can sell equipment or inventory or things like that, it is, even for someone who's coming in to buy a small business, oftentimes they also do not have the ability to value what a business is from the outside. So they see the things and they go, oh, well, look at all these things. And we know how much those are worth, so we can figure out what the business is worth. So yes, it's easier to see the tangible components for a business to be able to be sold. I don't know if it's easier though, because then it's, I don't know if it's easier or not. I actually can't answer that, Warren.
Right. Fair enough. Yeah. Because it is, there's reasons for each why they could be, a lot of it ultimately, I think I think one of the important takeaways from that perhaps is that it's more about how it's those risk factors for the buyer. If I don't have to be in there all the time, if there is a client base, if there's something protectable, it almost doesn't matter whether it's manufacturing, retail, service, knowledge-based, as long as those other criteria are there.
Yeah. And of course, if you're a service-based business, or anytime you have to sell something, so if you're in business for yourself and you've done any kind of marketing, you know that you have to appeal to the buyer. So if you're a service-based business and you have intangible value in your business or intangible assets in your business, then you just have to have a way of sharing that so the buyer understands what that value is.
Right. Mm-hmm. And so when someone engages with you, do you, I imagine out of the assessment you look and there's probably like 5 areas they need help with.
Yeah.
Do you do this on a monthly, quarterly planning basis where you prioritize things and focus on one at a time, or do you try to knock off 3 or 4 at the same time? Just from an entrepreneur, what would be the process?
Yeah, well, entrepreneurs don't like to do anything one at a time. Getting people to slow down sometimes is difficult. And it takes usually a few months for them to recognize as we go through the process that usually when I start, they're like, oh, I'm hoping to get out in a year if I could do it less. And I say, okay, well, we'll take a look at what actually has to change in your business. And if that's possible, then that's where you're going to go. And we get through it and they're going, oh, you know what? I'm hoping we'll get out in 3 years, because they're realizing if they want something of value, and sometimes business owners actually don't want to leave. That's another kind of misnomer, is that, the exiting the business doesn't mean that they're going to sell their shares in the business, that they're still going to have some kind of ownership and some part in it, but they're actually going to let go of the control of the CEO position or the president's position or whatever it is, and have that managed differently. So you asked me about the engagement, and I focus on a year, working with them for a year. And the idea is to get them to a place where their business would have all the pieces in place, or you are working on the pieces depending on where they are in the process as they go through it. But I look at the exit process is evaluation, explain, implement, and train. So the evaluation piece, which I talked about earlier, it sets the place of where everybody is, what the questions are that we have, what it is that you're actually doing, what has to get done. And then you start bringing in the people and finding out how they can fit into it, what they were willing to do, who can take on other things, what other resources you might need. And then you create the plan with the implementation. So what does that plan look like? And you said, I think you asked me, is it one at a time or a few things at a time? I like to ensure that that everybody has responsibilities in the transition, and that there is a way of keeping track of this. So a measurable and process to be able to check in that is not a 3-hour meeting once a week, but something that says, yeah, I'm on track, or no, I'm not on track. And then you can back out you got 3 people who aren't on track. Let's talk about that at our next major meeting. But being able to keep track of that is really important. So implementation with keeping track of those things, and then training. So the training components are just looking after how people are going to fit into the new way the business is working, how they're going to manage the tracking, and how they're going to manage the change. I mean, one of the things that we forget about when we go through change is that we were really interested in and tied to the way we did something in the past. And all of a sudden we have to do something different, and we have to figure out how that change happens. And for some people, there is kind of a loss of what we had before. Some are willing to let it go. Some are excited to move forward. And some people don't want to move forward. It's like, I really liked my job and I don't want to have to do the new things. So when you have more than one person in your business, you have more than one person who's having an experience as you go through that. So part of the implementation and change is to make sure that as people go through this, they have support systems that ensure that they stay on track, because you don't want people resisting your change.
Right.
Yeah.
And do you find that the owners, do they understand that? Like, especially, I imagine there's some who have kind of a command and control mentality, but to understand that your team has to be willing to go along for this ride.
I think maybe deep down we do understand. If you have children and you've had to go on vacation and you're trying to pack everything and get them in the car and get everything ready and prepare for that, and your kids are like, well, am I still having breakfast this morning? Do I have to put my things away? I don't know. This may not apply for everybody, or may not understand for everybody, but I think the feeling. If you've had to bring people along with you on a journey, they have to be willing to go on that journey. They have to know that they have to meet you at a certain time, that they have to bring the right things, and that they have to be prepared to be at the new place. So I think people instinctively know that that's what the transition means, but I don't think that we always think that that is what we have to do. We figure that, we're going to make a change. Everybody's going to do what they have to do, and we're not really thinking about what that transition might mean for them. And
so do you get involved with the team and helping with that, or are you mostly just with the owner and helping them figure out how to lead their team?
No, I definitely get involved with the team, because I want the team, and I want the business owner to have a team that is on board, and I want them to understand what that means for them as the business owner. So I want them to recognize that their team has these skills or doesn't, that the team is involved or isn't, is the team is happy, people are who is and isn't willing to do that. And when we have that assessed, it's really easy. It's like, okay, that person can't do this and they're not willing to do this, but they can hold this part of the fort that's not going to change, because we're going to do all this around it, and they're going to bring that piece in later, and they're okay with that. So if you don't know that, it makes it easier if you have someone else looking at that for you, I think, is what the point is for that. Yeah.
Yeah, no, that's super valuable. So what's next for Blitz? What's the future hold? Or for you?
Yeah, I'm looking at, I have some people that I am very interested in supporting. And I think partnerships are something that is a really big part of what I want, because I recognize that people, they keep saying, well, can you value my business? And I said, well, I can't value your business. That is a certified, trained person who should be doing that for you. And I have recently met and really like a couple of people that I want to have part of my business, so that there's things that they can do. So I'm just bringing on other people, making sure that I have the systems and people that can help my clients, so that they don't have to go, oh my gosh, the next piece, and thanks, Barb, but what am I going to do from now? And I think it's not enough. I want to see them make it all the way to the end.
Good for you. That's awesome. Mm-hmm. So it looks like I always end with a little rapid fire. Okay. So one decision or action that most helped you get where you are?
Well, okay. So it wasn't a business decision or action. Although I could probably give you two. So one was, I was afraid to do anything by myself when I was younger. And I didn't want to, I wanted to be where other people were. I always wanted to have other people around telling me I was doing the right thing. And so when I finished university, I decided that I wanted to travel. So I was 23. And the first time I went on an airplane, I took a plane to Australia with a visa by myself. And it was at a time, so just to show how old I am, it was at a time that you had to wait until the mail came back in the mailbox, not an email. So I hadn't heard back from the people yet because 6 weeks was not long enough to get a letter to someone and returned from Australia to find out whether they were going to be there to pick me up. So I was arriving in Australia by myself. I didn't know if I had a place to stay or if someone was picking me up. And that was a huge learning for me. By the way, they were there. I was thrilled. And they gave me a place to stay. And I had no plans except that I was going to be there for 6 months. And it was a really interesting journey for someone who is all plans and all strategy, to not have plans and then find my way through. It turns out I had a lot of plans because I had done a lot of research and I knew what I could do. I just hadn't made decisions yet. So that was a huge learning component of how to manage or how to help people make decisions in their business.
Nice. And if you had to do it all over again, would you do anything differently?
No. Oh gosh. Someone's asked me before, so tell me the regrets you have in your life. And it's like, I don't have any real regrets because everything that I did has been in the direction of what my highest values are and the fact that I am so dedicated to the people who are in my life.
Nice.
Yeah.
2 last little questions. So one personal quality that I most had to overcome or had to improve or overcome.
Well, I think I kind of mentioned it is this idea that I had to have validation from other people. And that is really difficult if you're trying to do something and it's like, are you sure? Is it okay? Am I good? And recognizing I'm so fortunate to have so many good people around me, besides coaches and mentors and whatnot, but just really great friends who would go, you're smart, you're intelligent, you care, you've done this before, you're experienced, stop beating yourself up with this. So yeah, it took a little bit of time, but yeah, I don't know that I will always have that skill, or I think there's always somewhere where it can creep back in. But generally speaking, I'm pretty happy with how that's turned out.
Nice. And no false humility. What's one personal quality that most contributed to your success?
I'd like to say that I'm really smart, but I think that people can be smart and not do really well. It's kind of like having a business with a really great product and not doing marketing, right? I think the reason why I've been really successful is because my number one value is truth. And so having that ability to make sure that I'm checking in with my own truth, that when I do things, sometimes I just don't do things because I don't believe in it. It doesn't align with the other values that I have or my mission in life, or it affects one of my other values is family. So if it affected what I had to do to be around family, one of the reasons why I started a business was to not commute an hour and a half a day when my children were small and actually be at home when they were getting up and going to bed. So it was really important that my values were not that I stuck within my value system.
I'm sure that makes it so that people trust you.
Yeah, I think that it does, and it has some other challenges, but yeah, it certainly makes a difference in how people perceive me.
Yeah, it's important. I think, like smart isn't necessarily trustworthy, right?
No.
But truthfulness and being of integrity does.
Yeah, I agree.
So is there any last thoughts or suggestions for entrepreneurs you'd like to share?
Well, if you're listening to this, you're probably listening to it because you're thinking that you might want to exit your business at some point in the future. So I would suggest if you have friends that are in business who are not thinking about it, kick them in the butt and tell them that they now need to start thinking about what that actually looks like so that they can have what they need in place just to be able to get to the place where they have choice. You want choice when you get there.
Yep. And you know what you do? Just to remember, there's a great play called Rosencrantz and Guildenstern Are Dead by Tom Stoppard.
I do like that.
No, you know it? It's great, eh?
Yeah.
There's a line in it that says, every exit is just an entrance to somewhere else.
Yes. Yeah, that's very true.
That's a great opportunity. So where can people find you?
Oh, you can find me at Blitz Business Success. I'm assuming that you are going to share, if you would like, you can share the assessment. So you can go and get the assessment, and at the end of that, if there's a reason why you wanted to contact me, it's in the assessment itself.
And that's a .com, right? It's businesssuccess.com.
.com. I'm sorry, yes, .com. Or you can get in touch with me at barb@blitzbusinesssuccess.com if you email me.
Thank you so much for being in the spotlight.
This was fun, Warren, as we knew it would be. So thank you for having me.
Cheers.